Hi, everyone. The Partial Prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So, I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about Esther gets the vaccine, but Queen Vashti does not. Okay, so I'm wondering if can you feel it? Things are nearing a conclusion. We are about to have the greater Exodus. So this concept comes from Jeremiah 16, and it says, "Therefore, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when it will no longer be said, As the Lord lives, who brought up the sons of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but as the Lord lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the countries where he had banished them. For I will restore them to their own land, which I gave to their fathers." Okay, so basically, we had the original Exodus, um, and that's in the book of Exodus in the Bible. So that happened a really long time ago, and we are repeating the pattern. And so this time around, instead of God pulling his people out of just one country, he's going to pull them out of all the countries where he had banished them. Okay, so we're in exile, and he's going to bring us out of exile and bring us all together and restore us to the land that he gave to our fathers, which could include America. Okay, so it could include both Israel, both countries, Israel and America. Because it's interesting that he says um, he's going to bring us out of the land of the north too. So that could be talking about America. So it's very interesting right now because we're in Passover right now, the Jewish holiday of Passover. Today that I'm recording this is the 7th day of Passover. Tomorrow's the 8th day of Passover. And so the Passover holiday is highly connected to the Exodus. It's all about celebrating the Exodus. So definitely very interesting, and very interesting how it's intersecting with is Easter, because obviously Easter has a lot to do with our redemption and freedom and resurrection and being set free from slavery, our slavery to sin. So very interesting. So somehow, okay. And so in my last video, I talked about Trump was Cyrus, and then we have Biden being Darius the Mede. Okay, so I was just going to do a quick overview of some things so you understand the time frame that we're in. So Trump fulfilled some of the prophetic shadows of Cyrus, and then now Biden is fulfilling some of the prophetic shadows of Darius the Mede. Okay, so definitely interesting. And then, so this was really kind of interesting. So that we read in Daniel where it talks about Darius the Mede receiving the kingdom at about the age of 62. January 7th, which was the day after the Capitol riot, ended up being 62 days after 11/7, which was when Biden was declared the winner of the election. So it was interesting because if there wasn't a Capitol riot, he would have been declared the winner, or they would have done the counting of the electoral college on January 6th. And so then it would have been 61 days. So very interesting. And so I saw a lot of 7-11s or 11/7s connected to Biden, because they declared him the winner on 11/7. And then the inauguration was 7/11 on the Hebrew calendar. And so definitely a connection to Revelation 11:7 talks about the beast coming up out of the abyss to make war with them. Genesis 11:7. Okay, well, so let's look at here. The beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them. So you see kind of how Biden's, cabinet is really like doing things that are going to end up killing America, like bankrupting America. There's actual some things too, like things are kind of dangerous because the border's open. but there's more. I mean, I really think like the whole, you know, that there's the militant on the left are going to rise up against the militant on the right. Um, so, anyways, but they really want to kill like America and, um, and all that it stands for. And then in Genesis 11:7, we read, "Come, let us go down there and confuse their speech, confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So that comes from the Tower of Babel story. So we really did have Biden kind of coming in and confusing the language of Trump's people. They kind of didn't really know what to do when Trump lost the election. So very interesting. And what's really interesting too is there's a new strain of the coronavirus that is like 1.1.7 or something like that. And so I thought that was interesting because you see that 7-11 or 11.7 number there again. Okay, so I wanted to talk about so one of the things that's kind of interesting is the Jewish people for Purim. Okay, so Purim happened like a month ago or something like that. And one of the things the Jewish people do, one of their traditions for Purim is to eat these Hamatashin cookies, okay? And so they're triangle cookies with jelly in the middle, okay? And they actually fold over the sides and put jelly in them. And let's see, right now I can't do multiple things. I'm looking up when, okay, Purim was actually February 26th. Okay, so yeah, so about a month and a week ago. So what's interesting about these Haman cookies is that they have three corners. And so the Jewish people, like, they either call them like Haman, they say they're Haman's ears, or they're Haman's hat, or they're Haman's pocket, they're Haman pockets. And so it's a three-sided, like if it's a hat, Haman's hat, it would be three-sided. And so I've been thinking a lot about, like with Trump, and then I came up with the triangle for Biden too, is, okay, so what if you take Trump and if you look at how people are kind of turning him into their, he's either being a political leader to some people, or a spiritual leader to other people, or a military leader to other people. And so like the political leader, it's interesting that now not all Republicans, but like conservatives, Republicans are kind of, I mean, obviously he got nominated, so they're looking to him to be their political leader, to stand up for what they believe in and stuff like that. So we see that aspect of Trump. But it was also interesting, it especially came out during the Capitol riot, is that we're seeing people looking to him to be their military leader. We read about on the crucifixion that there's, what is the guy's name, Barabbas, that they let go, who was an insurgent. And so we see this concept of people that, want to take over the government, okay? And so we saw that with the Capitol riot. We see kind of the militant on the right looking to Trump to be their leader, and they were actually hearing him, whether he was saying it or not in so many words. They actually were hearing him say, go, go fight, go take over the government. So that would be a lot of the white supremacists, the Proud Boys. There's another group that I can't remember the name of. So they're like looking to Trump to be their leader, to fulfill kind of what they're looking for, which is to like take over America through military might. And then Um, and then okay, so then let's talk about him being a spiritual leader. What's interesting is that we kind of see like the charismatics, the prosperity movement, um, and there's actually been this whole group of prophets that were prophesying that he was going to be reelected. And so they are actually looking to him. They had this belief that he was going to win again, and he was the one that was going to usher in revival into America. And so they were kind of looking to him to be a messianic type figure without him really being the Messiah. Um, and so they took kind of the fact that he was fulfilling some of the prophecies of Cyrus, they took it too far, because, Cyrus got work on the temple started, but then, um, you know, it was Nehemiah that first like worked on the wall, and then it was Ezra who came and worked on the temple, I think is how it works. So Trump got things started, but it really wasn't his calling from God to build the temple. And you'll see why when you actually see the real Messiah. uh, because um, I really think the purpose of Trump was to separate out of God's people. The purpose of Trump's presidency was to separate the wheat and the tares, okay? And so the tares are the ones that are looking to Trump to be their spiritual leader or their political leader or their military leader. Um, because I just don't really think he's on God's side. I kind of been thinking about the verses where it says, I could do all these things, but if I don't have love, I'm just a noisy gong. And so Trump, yes, he may move the embassy to Jerusalem, the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and he may come up with these quote unquote peace plans. But if he doesn't have love, and I really do not believe that he had love for the Jewish people in Israel, then he's just a noisy gong. And that's what I really think Trump was. And then, so we see just similar stuff with Biden, and I'm not as aware of kind of the how people are looking at Biden. It all started with Obama and his presidency. That was definitely, we saw kind of the growth of the left side during the time of Obama, and then it's now Biden's kind of representing them, and so they're looking to him. And I think one of the things too, because he's grandfatherly, like people didn't like that we had Trump kind of in charge during the COVID crisis because he just wasn't very comforting, and so Biden and his vice president, they actually go out of their way to try to be comforting, although they're not, to me, they're not comforting either, Um, but that could have been one of the reasons why he won, is that people were looking for more comfort. But we definitely see with Biden that, he is now representing the Democrats, which the Democrat Party, I mean, you could say this about both the Democrat and the Republican Party, that it's kind of like both parties moved very far. The Republicans moved very far to the right, and the Democrats moved very far to the left. It's very, Trump was very extreme in his policies, and the Democrats now are very extreme. So kind of the more moderate people are kind of feeling left out. Because we're seeing with the Democrat Party that they're moving more into socialism, big time. And then, like, as a military leader, I mean, I don't know how much BLM is looking to Biden to be their leader, because they already kind of had a lot of power before he came in. But we definitely see the militant on the left, they came through the BLM, and so Biden would kind of be like a leader to them. Obama was definitely a big leader to them. And then, as a spiritual leader, I could see that liberal Christianity and people that like care more about social justice and stuff like that are looking to Biden as a spiritual leader. Um, and so then you can see in these triangles that I put 666 in the corners because I'm kind of wondering if, there's a connection, to the number of the beast. And I've talked a lot about the 666 connecting to Trump, but I really wonder if it connects to Biden too. And I haven't really had time to think about that and how that might work. Um, because I really think with Trump that he was like the sixth president and Biden's the seventh president. Um, but we see so many similarities between, kind of the religion of Trump and the religion of Biden. Um, and, because, I mean, part of the religion is like protesting and rioting in the street. You know, um, there's the verse that talks about Rachel, is it Rachel or Rebecca, pregnant with twins, that she has twins in her womb that are going to be separated from her body. And so it's kind of interesting because the left criticizes the right and the right criticizes the left, but I see so many similarities in, the extreme um, sides of, both groups. It's a lot of the same behavior, going on. So, definitely very interesting. Okay, and so, one of the things that I was kind of talking about was kind of this concept of molding an idol. And so, in the scripture, we read about, idols, and we think of them being like an actual thing made out of gold that people are worshiping. But God talks about idols being molded. And so, really, today, it's not so much necessarily that we have actual physical idols that people are bowing down to, but people are taking human people and in their mind molding them into someone that they are idolizing. Okay. And that's what we see happening with Trump and Biden. Because we read in Isaiah 40, it says, "As for the idol, a craftsman cast it, a goldsmith plates it with gold, and a silversmith fashions chains of silver." So it's all about fashioning and molding and creating and casting. And then in Revelation 13, we read about this is the beast from the earth, and it says, "And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast." It says telling in NASB, but it could mean causing those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So people are fashioning their idol, okay, out of, either Trump or Biden. And then I just did a really quick, I don't have time to go into all this stuff. I covered parts of this in some of my videos, but hopefully maybe in the future we'll have time to go through more of the details. But I kind of think in Revelation 12 we read about the woman. I think the woman is the church. Okay, I think the red dragon is Obama. And then, so this is from Revelation 12. And then the male child who rules with a rod of iron. A lot of people always thought that was the Messiah, but I think that connects to Trump. And then we read about Michael and his angels. I think that could be connected to the Messiah. But also I think there's multiple fulfillments. I think sometimes you could read the verses and apply it to different people, a different situation. But the final ultimate fulfillment is going to be Michael and his angels are going to be the Messiah, is what I think. And then in the next chapter in 13, we read about the beast from the sea. I really think that's Black Lives Matter movements. The beast from the earth. And that's the beast. We're always talking about the Antichrist having the 666, but we don't really know our Bible. It's really the beast from the earth that's connected to the 666. And so I really believe that's Trump. The image to the beast I connect to Biden because the Democrats brought in someone to kind of represent them, and we all kind of wonder how much Obama's kind of pulling strings and other people are pulling strings behind the scenes with Biden. um, um, okay, so I wanted to talk about the beast from the sea. Okay, because like I said, I think it represents BLM. Okay, so let's read Revelation 13. It says, and the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. So that would be like Obama standing on God's people, is kind of what I think. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. So this beast actually is kind of got aspects of other beasts. Okay. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him? There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation was given to him. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. So I highlighted 10 horns because I think we read about the 10 horns in Revelation 17 and 18, where it's talking about Babylon. And so it's really significant that we understand that this beast has 10 horns. Okay. And really the 10 horns connect to when they were in the wilderness. There was 10 people that did not have faith, and there was 2 people that had, of the 12 spies, 10 did not have faith and 2 did have faith. Okay, so I think these 10 horns also connect to the 10 in the wilderness that don't have faith. Okay. And then what's interesting is this beast has 7 heads. And so I kind of wonder if the 7 heads connect to, okay, so it talks about the heads connecting to the blasphemous names. And we've heard like Hillary Clinton use these terms. We see Obama has used these terms. We've been called racist. Americans have been called racist, sexist, homophobes, etc., misogynist, and so I don't know the whole list of 7, but I think what it is there's 7 blasphemous names that they use for America and for God's people. And what's interesting is that the beast, so I'm going to jump down and talk about this because one of the 7 heads, okay, so in verse 3 it says, I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. Okay, so if one of the heads connects to, this blasphemous name that we're racist, I think what God is saying is that, okay, the people on the left want to call us racist and say, that we've been a racist country, but if you actually understand the real history of America, that the racism, the slavery issue got dealt with in this country, okay, and it was healed, okay. First the Civil War did a lot to abolish slavery. Okay, there was a lot that happened then, and then in the 50s, 60s, I mean, really early on, there was Jim Crow laws. Those ended up being overturned. Okay, so that actually in all of my lifetime, I never saw 2 drinking fountains or certain bus seats. It was open for everyone in all of my lifetime. Okay. Um, so it's been a while. Um, and so, I believe that this was healed in our country, but they want to say that it hasn't been healed. Okay. And so I think that's totally wrong. Okay. And then it says, and the same is true about some of their other, blasphemous names for us. Okay. This has been a very loving, free country. Okay. With Christianity, um, we might not have really supported gay lifestyles, but we respected their right to, live, as free people in this country. Things like that. So what's interesting is that, okay, so with this beast, the dragon gave him his power and his throne and his great authority. Okay, so, I really think the BLM people were influenced by Obama. He was, kind of like their father. He gave them, if you read his book, I think things that happened while he was president helped the growing of this organization, and then Obama definitely gave him his approval when his book came out. Okay, and then it says, let's see. Okay. And then it says who's like the beast and who is able to wage war with him. Because what we saw is it was really interesting is that during Trump's presidency, when we had the BLM riots, Trump really, I don't know what the issue was. It was like Trump didn't know how to deal with them, or the local people didn't know how to deal with them. But they did a lot of damage. They did a lot of, violence and destruction. And so it seemed like we didn't have anyone who was really able to deal with them. And it says this beast was given authority to act for 42 months, which I think that relates to a time frame, while during Trump's presidency. And then, because the 42-month time frame too, we see that they were trampling the court of the temple for 42 months. Okay. And so really kind of like, even though May 26th of 2020, the BLM riots really ramped up because of the George Floyd incident, there was really the whole time of Trump, we were seeing, rioting going on. Okay. And then, so this beast opens his mouth in blasphemies against God, who blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. So BLM does not have respect for America. Who I believe America has been God's country and that God blessed this country. And then now we have all these people that don't respect America and don't honor it and revere it. Okay. And then it says, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Okay, so I kind of think earth connects to America, mystically speaking, in the scripture, and then heaven would connect to Israel. So all who dwell on the earth will worship this beast. One, because they were bullies, so they were scaring people to kind of join this group or donate to this group. But we saw, kind of like that was what was happening. It was like people were starting to fall left and right and join BLM and give money to them, and companies were all of a sudden putting things on their website in support of BLM. So that's what we saw happening. So that's why I believe BLM is the beast from the sea. And then the beast from the earth, I definitely believe is Trump. Okay. So Revelation 13:11, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, which earth would be America, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. So I don't know if the 2 horns connect to Well, one thing is the two horns could connect to the two witnesses. And, so I think they would connect to Trump and Netanyahu, but I also kind of wonder if it connects to like Christians and Jews were kind of the ones that voted Trump in. And so that would be similar to Jesus would have Christians and Jews on his side. But this beast from the earth spoke as a dragon. We definitely saw Trump had fiery words all the time. Okay. And then it says he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. Okay, if the first beast is the dragon, Trump was doing all these things in Obama's presence. And then it says he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. Okay, so what we see is if the first beast is the dragon, the fatal wound was healed when Biden became president. It's like Obama's third term, okay? And then it says the beast from the earth performs great signs. That would be Trump's 6 peace deals, quote unquote, so that he even makes fire, which would be judgment from heaven, like the coronavirus, come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, causing those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So we saw that like we saw kind of this diluting influence that came over Trump followers because some of the reason connecting to where they saw him as their political leader, their spiritual leader, their military leader, but and also because Trump, because of some of the signs that he was doing was these things with Israel. So spiritual people were, all of a sudden being deluded because of the things, people were saying he's a great friend to Israel, and I never thought he was a good friend to Israel. But we definitely saw, especially, during the Capitol riot, how there was this diluting influence that came over these people, and people were hearing Trump say things that he may or may not have been saying. But also, too, Trump did tend to kind of like dabble in conspiracy theories. So it just was not a good time. And then because of the things that he did, he was causing people who dwell on the earth, he was causing Americans to want to vote to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. He was causing these people to vote in Biden, basically. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast. And so this is actually still true now because of the things that Trump did, because of the things that his followers did. It's giving life to Biden's presidency, that they, some of the things they're doing is really all about doing the opposite of what Trump did. Okay. Like I said, trying to be more comforting about coronavirus and stuff like that. So let's see. And it says, and he causes all the small, the great, the rich and the poor, the freemen and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. So I think a lot of people are looking for an actual physical mark, and I think that's wrong. We see this number 6 connected to man, and we see a mark in who are Cain and Abel. Okay, so Cain got a mark because he killed Abel. Okay, and so because of the things that Trump did, he's causing people to be given a mark because some of the things that Trump did caused death to various groups of people. I think some of his policies in Israel, and especially because it's not over yet, that I think the blood of the Israelites, the Israelis are going to be, put on the Trump followers' hands. There was Trump caused the Kurds to get killed by Turkey because of his policies there. And then with the Capitol riots, people got killed there too. And so that's what I think is connected to this mark. And then it's interesting, it says, and that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark. Basically what and I talked about this mark being connected to both sides. Basically, like, Trump's religion is a religion of buying and selling, and Biden's religion is a religion of buying and selling. They're both connected to money. Biden's more like, we read about kind of like the prostitute who, in the prophets, it talks about a prostitute who's like worse than a prostitute because the prostitute actually gives away money, and so I think that connects to Biden. But we saw with Trump's peace plans and stuff like that, it was all about buying and selling with these different countries, so it's all about turning, God's country into, all turned into buying and selling. Okay. And so I made a list of Trump and Netanyahu's 6 peace deals. The date here's, there's 6 of them if you count them. The last one that I know about was the peace deal with Kosovo on February 1st. And there was always kind of judgment that came after these peace deals. The coronavirus came 7 weeks after the deal of the century. Okay. There was Hurricane Laura came after the peace, quote unquote, peace deal with UAE. Hurricane Sally came after the peace deal, well, the same day as the peace deal signings in Washington. So that's what we saw happening. What was interesting is that February 2nd was 12 months, 6 days after the deal of the century. That was Groundhog Day, okay? And so it's kind of interesting. It's kind of hard to know with the, when we've kind of moved into Biden, sometimes it was hard to know whether judgment was for these peace, which judgments connected to Trump's behavior and Netanyahu's behavior, or which, was connected to Biden, because Biden was starting to do some stuff too. And we saw on February 2nd that Biden was he decided he was going to resume the money that America used to give to the Palestinians, which is like billions of dollars. Okay. And that happened on Groundhog Day that he made that announcement. Off to the side here too, I wrote on 12/6/2017 was when Trump announced he was moving the embassy to Jerusalem, because we see kind of these numbers. I think, this is why I think Trump's connected to the 666, because we see some of these numbers, just like we saw 11/7 with Biden. There was 12/6 kind of connected with Trump, and so 12/6 can be parsed out to be 666. That was when he first announced that he was moving the embassy to Jerusalem. And so like the day after the last peace deal was February 2nd, was 12 months, 6 days after the deal of the century. Okay, so he did, the time frame of all these peace deals were 12 months and 6 days. Okay. So that's my point with that. And then I talked about this in my last video, but Biden is definitely Belshazzar drinking from the temple vessels. And I won't read the story. You can listen to my last scripture. But basically, what we have is Biden. Okay, it says Belshazzar the king held a great feast, and they were, they took the gold and silver vessels out of the temple and they were drinking out of them. And they drank the wine and praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Basically with this, I'm kind of mixing the feast with the 7-day feast that we see in Esther 1, where they were drinking wine there and there was no limit to the amount of wine that they could drink. I think that connects to Biden too. And so basically what we see is that Biden's in power in America right now, and he is just having a great time with the treasures of America. Okay. And if you understand that America was God's country, you could see why God's not happy with this. Okay. And so what I wrote is Biden had his $1.9 trillion quote unquote coronavirus relief bill. But, if you really look at some of that money, first of all, that's a lot of money. Okay. I don't think people understand money, it really probably doesn't mean much to them, but that's a lot of money. It's going to bankrupt our country. But one of the things, he said coronavirus relief. One, Ben Shapiro talks about, Biden, wants to say we need coronavirus relief when we're really kind of nearing the end of the coronavirus. Okay. And, so it really wasn't maybe necessary for this bill. But there was also a lot of liberal, their pork, their causes in this bill. And so what we, like, a very good example was they wanted to give money to libraries. Okay. Well, if you understand, like this, I understand because, I was, trying to get on my library board, and I really saw how the American Library Association is a very liberal organization with a lot of power, with a huge liberal left evil agenda. Like they want drag queen story hour in all the libraries and stuff like that. And so the fact of giving more money to libraries just doesn't sit well with me because I don't like their agenda. So that was just an example. I mean, we could talk, a long time for some of the pork that's in that bill. And then he just came out with his $2 trillion. He called it an infrastructure plan. According to Ben Shapiro, it's only like 5% going toward bridges and roads. And same thing again, there's a lot of pork, a lot of left, a lot of the agenda of the left with that money. Okay. And so I had heard someone say that if you take the 1.9 trillion and add it to the 2 trillion, it's actually going to cost, and you do the math, it actually is going to cost every single household in America $32,000. Okay. To me, $32,000 is a lot of money. Okay. And especially a lot of money going to things that I don't care about. Okay. Then we also saw that Biden is, I said this already, he's restored the funding to the Palestinians, and then he's about to re-enter the Iran deal. And so I don't know if that's going to include some money from America to go to Iran. We already know with the Palestinians, the money goes to terrorism, and so the same thing would happen with Iran. And the other thing with the Iran deal, which is so evil and wicked, is that Iran wants to build a nuclear weapon to bomb Israel. His agenda is not good, and it really is about stealing from America. Okay. So that is what is going on. So that's why I think he's Belshazzar. But good news, Belshazzar got judged. Okay. And like quickly he got judged. Okay, so hang on. I mean, we see in the story there a human hand emerges and begins writing opposite the lampstand. I think there's a connection to the story of Moses in the cleft of the rock, which is a connection to the Red Sea dividing of the Red Sea. It's the same kind of picture that God shows all over throughout his scripture. And so So hang on, I think that Jesus is going to come and then Biden's going to be judged. Okay, so the money changers. Okay, so like I said, both Biden and Trump, I think, are the money changers. Okay, because when we read about this in Mark 11, it says, "Then they came to Jerusalem, and he, Jesus, this would be Jesus, entered the temple area and began to drive out those who were selling and buying on the temple grounds. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple grounds. And he began to teach and say to them, Is it not written, My house will be called the house of prayer for all the nations? But you have made it a den of robbers." And the chief priests and the scribes heard this, and they began seeking how to put him to death, for they were afraid of him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. Okay, so I think this applies to both Trump and Biden, that they have made America a den of robbers. Okay, and so I said that this passage about he overturned the table of the money changers, that would connect to Biden and his followers. Okay, this is basically they're they're taking my money and giving it to who they want. Okay, so they're changing what gets done with that money. And then the seats of those who were selling doves would be Trump and his followers, because selling doves would be like a picture of like the peace deals that Trump made. Peace, doves connected to peace. They were selling peace. That was really what Trump was doing with his peace deals. Okay, so I think those are the two groups of people that God's bringing judgment to when Jesus comes. And then, so in Esther chapter 1, we see 180-day feasts. Okay. I think that connects to Trump's peace deals, because you could parse out 18 to be 666. What's interesting is 813, which was the first day of, it was the, one of the second peace deal, the first like peace deal that wasn't the deal of the century was on 813. And then if you count the days to 2/8, it was 180 days. What's interesting is that on 2/9, which would be day 181, or like you can see that as like 8/11, was the start of Trump's second impeachment trial. Okay, so very interesting. Okay, so like kind of like judgment for Trump. Okay. And then in Esther chapter 1, it talks about a 7-day feast. At first, I thought that might have been connected to Trump's second impeachment trial, but his impeachment trial only lasted 5 days. But what we see is a 7-day feast. This is what I said before, where drinking was done without restraint. There was no limit to the amount of wine that they could drink. Okay. Biden, okay, so the 7-day feast, at first I thought there was going to be like 7 weeks of Biden, but it's been longer than that. But Biden, it could connect to Biden, because he could be, like, I'm starting to see numbers is kind of symbolic, and so Biden could be the 7th king, and we'll talk about that on another slide. But also we saw that 7 weeks of the impeachment vote leads us to Holy Saturday, which is today when I'm making this video. The 7-day feast could also connect to Passover, okay? Because, in Israel, it's a 7-day feast. Outside of Israel, it's an 8-day feast, okay? But really in the scriptures, God made it a 7-day feast, okay? And then what we saw was that Queen Vashti would not come at the king's command on the 7th day, okay? Of the 7-day feasts is what I'm thinking. Okay, so what's interesting is during Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, the 7th day is considered the day of final judgment. What's really interesting is that we're in the month of Nisan, and you can consider the month of Nisan to be either the first month or the 7th month. It just depends on where you start counting. And so, Passover you could also see kind of a parallel with Sukkot. I mean, there is a lot of overlap between Passover and Sukkot because, I mean, they both kind of connect to, the freedom from Egypt. Um, there is just a lot of parallels between those two holidays. So it's interesting. The seventh day is considered like the day of final judgment. Okay, that started on Yom Kippur. Okay, and so what's interesting is that, so is today like the last day of final judgment? God has been testing us. He's been seeing how we were going to respond. I think the coronavirus, the shutdowns, and everything were all a test to see how we were going to respond. Okay, and so what if today's the day of final judgment and then he's going to send judgment? Okay, so we'll just have to see what happens. And so basically what happened is the king he told the 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti with royal crown, but she refused to come. Okay, so with the crown, what's interesting is the woman in Revelation 12, which I told you was connected to the church probably, she had a crown of 12 stars. There's so much in the scripture about, you don't want to lose your crown. We see in Isaiah 28, it says, the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim is trodden underfoot. Okay, so that could be a connection. So what we could see is maybe Queen Vashti is connected to Ephraim, which is kind of like connected to the 10 missing tribes. Like Ephraim and Judah would make up Israel. Okay, so that's like a whole nother teaching. But also Ephraim could kind of connect to maybe like the tares out of the wheat and tares. So anyways, but it just says the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim is trodden underfoot. What's interesting to me too is the crown also connects to the coronavirus. So that's kind of interesting. But what I kind of think is that, okay, in Psalm 78, there's another verse where we read about Ephraim, and it says, the sons of Ephraim were archers equipped with bows, yet they turned back in the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God and refused to walk in his law. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering if you could look at, okay, the sons of Ephraim are archers equipped with bows. Right now with the coronavirus, you could see maybe like the shots that they're giving us, the needles would be like the bows that we now have. We're able to fight against this coronavirus by getting a shot, getting, well, 2 shots or whatever it takes. And it's very interesting because we see there's a lot of people on the right that are refusing to get the shot. Okay, like some of the followers of Trump and stuff. And it kind of plays into this whole, it's really indicative of a bigger rebellious nature is really what it is. I mean, I'm not gonna like focus too much on the fact that they don't want to get their shot, because it's just a lot more to that. They don't want to be told what to do. And so there's, this whole group of people on the right, and it's actually kind of happening worldwide, that they've been protesting against the shutdowns, the masks, and the vaccine. Okay, because they do not want to be told what to do, even if it's for our own good. Okay, even if it's to protect us from the coronavirus. Okay, so what we see with Vashti is it talks about that there be lots of contempt and anger. Okay, and so what I think is that Vashti is a picture of these rebellious people that have a lot of contempt toward authority. Okay, and so they would be like some of the people in America that just like the people on the left and BLM, there's these people on the right that also think America is bad and the government is bad. And so we saw with Trump and his conspiracy theories that he caused people to not trust the government. So he used to use terms like drain the swamp. He had a us versus them mentality. Then with the election, he was, trying to get people to not trust the election. He was kind of talking about the election was stolen from him. And so it fed into, I think these people were probably already kind of didn't trust the government, but he fed into their, belief system. Okay. And so now we see a bunch of people that have a lot of contempt and anger toward America. So just like we see on the left where they hate America and want to see it go away, we're seeing, like I said, they're twins. We're seeing on the right hand side, there's people that now hate America and don't trust America, and want it to go away. They want to take it over. They want Trump to take it over. Okay, so Trump and his conspiracy theories cause people to not trust the government, drain the swamp. Oh, wait. Okay, so they went from, so during the election and stuff, these people were all talking about stop the steal, and they went from stop the steal to now stop the vaccine, stop the lockdowns. The stop the lockdowns have been around for a while. So what's interesting is we read in Isaiah 5:20, it says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Because what I believe is the coronavirus is evil, it's bad, and that the vaccine is good, okay? And basically what I think is the coronavirus is something that probably it was cooked up in a lab in Japan. Maybe just messing around with genetic things, so that now this virus is highly contagious and destructive. And so what I believe, I don't want to go too far saying it's evil, because it is evil, but God has been using it as a tool to test us. Okay. So I heard a prophet saying that the coronavirus came from the devil. And then when you say that, you're sort of like not acknowledging that God allowed it to happen, and you're giving the coronavirus too much power. God's able to deal with this coronavirus. Okay. But what I kind of think, I think we were supposed to have 12 months of testing with this coronavirus, and we've been through that. And now, that's why we have the vaccine now. And so I believe that God allowed the vaccine to happen because, it was something good that he was bringing to help us with the coronavirus. Okay. So what we are seeing with people on the right is they're saying it exactly opposite. Like, they kind of are saying like the coronavirus is not that bad and the vaccine is evil. And so they have it, I think, kind of exactly opposite. Okay, I think the vaccine is some good that God allowed to happen, to set us free from the coronavirus. Although we do know when the Messiah comes, his vaccine will be 100% effective. So looking forward to that. And so what I believe is that we all need a healthy fear of God's judgment and chastening. That's why, I think with the coronavirus, I might have been a little over afraid of it, but I would read in the word about God's judgment, and I do definitely think we needed judgment in this country. And I understood too, because I was following with Trump's peace plans and stuff. I understood why God was bringing judgment to this country. And so I had a healthy fear of, I did not take the coronavirus lightly. I had a healthy fear of it. because I have a healthy fear of God's judgment and chasten. Okay, I mean, I do believe he was using the coronavirus to chasten us too, you know. And, but what I'm seeing is that, these Vashtis, I'll call them Vashtis, they didn't have a healthy fear of God's judgment, and then they don't have a reverence for America. Okay, and so we saw that with the Capitol riot. There's the story of the guy, the guard in the Capitol that was telling, two of the people, that where they were at was considered sacred space because that was where they voted and stuff like that, like the inner sanctum of the Capitol. But they ignored them. Okay, so those people did not have reverence for America. Okay, and so that's what I see as a Vashti type person. Okay, but I also wanted to, point out, because not everyone who doesn't want to take the vaccine, I don't think everyone is a Vashti, because we have this story of, okay, I like this story, and okay, so it's this girl called Lively, okay, and she got really caught up in the QAnon thing, and she realized that it had a lot to do with the fact that this is what I think, is that sometimes when people can't really handle reality, they'll cling to a conspiracy theory that for whatever reason is easier for their psyche to handle. Okay. And so I do think that there is kind of this group of people that were maybe buying into some of Trump's encouraged conspiracy theories and the QAnon conspiracy theories that were going on, because the coronavirus could have been a little too overwhelming for them to handle. Okay. And so we need to be aware of that, so that we're not, unsympathetic with people that struggle with that. Because I know for me, I had a hard time dealing. I guess the way I dealt with the coronavirus is I always thought it was going to be really short and that Jesus was going to come back really quickly. Um, um, and so that's, I mean, if I knew it was going to last the whole year, that would have been kind of overwhelming for me. So I guess I kind of took it a day or a month or a week at a time. But so I want to read to you what this Lively girl says. Because she has this is a really cool testimony. Because she said, within weeks, I found myself in this echo chamber. I went into denial about the pandemic as a coping mechanism. And there was QAnon to comfort me and tell me, oh no, oh, it's not real, it's not happening. It was a digital brainwashing. So she saw how, she was buying into these QAnon theories, as a comfort, okay, to help her with not, be needing to deal with the actual coronavirus pandemic. And so I can't remember, it's been a while now since I read the rest of her story. And so there was something that happened in her life that, oh, I know what it was. She is the one who, she had this big meltdown in Target over the masks, because she was being told by QAnon that people were trying to control us, to wear masks. And so she saw the mask display and just had this big meltdown. And then that was really kind of like her hitting bottom. And so her husband got help for her after that. And so it's a really great testimony of just how we can, people, well-meaning people can go astray because of conspiracy theories. And especially now with the internet, everyone could kind of just go off on some major conspiracy theory tangent, and really have it ruin their lives. And, so I like her story because she got help for it, and so it was a really neat story. Um, and then, okay, so on the other side, we see I have the article where it says far right extremists move from stop the steal to stop the vaccine. And so there's a need of these people, to believe in conspiracy theories, even though what I believe is that there's a whole group of people on the far right um, who are the Vashti type people, who are going to be the Trump followers, who are going to make Trump their Messiah rather than wait for the true Messiah. Um, and then in the middle, I kind of was, I'm starting to see some articles where maybe what was really happening was we were seeing a downplaying of the coronavirus. I watched some videos about how China really definitely tried to downplay the coronavirus in their country, which was really evil and wicked, because if they had been honest from the beginning, we could have, they could have stopped it from spreading around their country and spreading around the world. Okay. And so what we saw some similar behavior with Trump, where, well, we saw that Trump admitted in an interview that he was downplaying the virus to, in his words, to keep from causing a panic. But you got to be careful, because did he end up downplaying it too much that people weren't taking it seriously enough? And so did that end up making things worse? I don't know. There's allegedly maybe Cuomo in New York was trying to hide nursing home deaths of COVID because to protect himself. And so, and then there was this report about Florida maybe possibly undercounting COVID-19 deaths. And then, like, this is just a really quick research that I did, and I didn't have time to really show you the actual articles and all that stuff. There's this one article where supposedly this HHS Health and Human Services senior advisor Paul Alexander was aiming to water down a report on the effects of COVID on children to match Trump's efforts to downplay the virus. So was there political stuff going on during the time of Trump that was causing the coronavirus to be downplayed? But we also know that there was people on the left that maybe their motivation was because the people on the left, they want a crisis because they want to take advantage of a crisis to push for their agenda. So the bottom line is, we really don't have a good idea of what the truth is during the time of Trump. Are the numbers accurate? I think we're almost up to 600,000 people dying from coronavirus in this country. But how accurate is that number? Is it less? Is it more? I don't know. So we just have to kind of be aware that we're not really sure. But I did want to point out about how we saw that China downplayed the virus, and that was evil that they did that. Okay. Anytime you lie about the truth, it's just not good behavior. Because it would have been helpful for us to know the truth, and so that's what's going on there. So I wanted to so what I think we see in the Book of Esther is kind of this contrast between the Vashti character and the Esther character. Okay. And so what we see with Esther is that, okay, so in Esther 2:20 it says, Esther had not yet made known her kindred or people, even as Mordecai had commanded her. For Esther did what Mordecai told her, as she had done when under his care. So what we see is Vashti did not listen to the king, but we have Esther that listens to Mordecai. Okay. And so what we read in Hebrews 13:17, it says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you. And then in Romans 13, we read, every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. So what we see is, okay, so if you understand that really ultimately God is in control, okay, and so yes, sometimes our rulers are evil and have evil agendas, but God has allowed the rulers to be in leadership that he wanted to accomplish his purposes. And I really think during the coronavirus that God wanted to put us in shutdown, because I think I talked about this where he wanted to put us in like a type of booth. Okay, the coronavirus was really a time of testing, a time of chastening. Okay, and so as we if we protest against this, we may be actually, if we protest against the leaders that are telling us to do certain things, we might actually find ourselves fighting against God. Okay, like they told Paul, it's hard to kick against the goads. You don't want to find yourself fighting with God. Okay, and so we saw with Esther that she had more of a submissive attitude. Vashti had more of a rebellious attitude. So what happens with Vashti? She loses her crown. Esther replaces her. Okay. Okay. And so I wanted to talk about this too. I said that I see that there was 12 months of beauty treatments in the book of Esther to prepare Esther to become queen in place of Vashti. Okay. What we read about in Revelation, we read about perseverance. In Revelation 3, it says, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write, he who is holy, he who is true, as the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one opens, says this, I know your deeds. Behold, I have put before you an open door which no one can shut, because you have a little power and have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down at your feet and make them know that I have loved you. Because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I will also keep you from the hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, so that no one will take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he will not go out from it any more. And I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and my new name. So very powerful verses. So what I kind of think is that the sixth church, Philadelphia is the sixth church. I think it connects to the time of Trump. Okay, so then Laodicea would connect to the time of Biden, is what I'm thinking. And so what we see is that during the time of Philadelphia, God was testing us to see if we would have perseverance. Okay, would we persevere? Would we continue to follow God during the coronavirus shutdowns? Okay, and so God says, hold fast what you have so that no one will take your crown. So these Vashti people are going to lose their crown because they did not hold fast to what they have. Okay, and so I kind of think it's interesting. Philadelphia, they kind of call it the church of like brotherly love. What's interesting is that when God's talking about the church in Philadelphia, he talks about the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. What I kind of wonder is that if they are like the Vashtis, the tares of the church. And so they say they are Christians and they really aren't. Okay. Um, and so I wonder if they're going to end up being our slaves or whatever. So I think these are the tares because they did not keep the word of God's perseverance. Okay. And they didn't hold fast to what they have, so they are going to lose their crown. Okay. So that's what I get from those verses. And then okay, first in First Peter 4 we read, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation." So I was trying to find, I thought there was a verse that talked about like finishing the sufferings of Christ. But what we see in First Peter, like, we shouldn't have been surprised about this fiery ordeal of the coronavirus, okay? Because God sent it to us for our testing, okay? And God wanted to see how much we were willing to submit to share in the sufferings of Christ, how much we were willing to carry our cross during the coronavirus. That was the test. Are you willing to share in the sufferings of Christ? Okay. Because in the prophets, God actually talks about, the people that weren't willing to go into exile with you. That God was going to bring judgment on those people. Okay. So these people were not willing to submit themselves to the exile of the coronavirus, of being shut down in our houses. We saw that with even churches that were rebellious about, we're going to meet, we don't care what the government says, so I definitely think Vashti, type characters. Okay. So then I wanted to talk about this. Okay. So this comes from Daniel 2. So the king has a dream. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So what I was wondering is if the head of gold is Netanyahu, the breast and arms of silver connect to Reagan, Bush and Bush 1 and Bush 2. The bellies and thighs of bronze connect to Obama, Bill Clinton, and Biden. The legs of iron can connect to Trump and the Black Lives Movement. The feet and toes that are part iron and part clay could connect to Trump's peeps plus Biden's peeps, or is the clay connected to Messiah's peeps? So I'm not totally sure the mixture there, but there's definitely a mixture there. Okay. I mean, what's interesting is there's 2 feet and there's 10 toes, so you get kind of the 12 tribes there. I don't really know how that, how that's going to work out. But what we, so this is what I came up with is I started with Ronald Reagan and came up with 7 presidents with Joseph Biden. And, I didn't know if it would go all the way back to Jimmy Carter. So then that would make Donald Trump like this. Okay, let's see. I mean, so what I have is Barack Obama being the 5th, Donald Trump being the 6th, which would connect to all that 666 stuff, and then Biden being the 7th. Okay. But if we change it, we could have Jimmy Carter being, the first one. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Barack Obama would end up being the 6th one, and Donald Trump would be the 7th one, and then Biden would be the 8th one that comes back. So that's a possibility. So I'm not totally really sure. But I definitely think there's a connection with the verses in Revelation to the statue, because it says, "Here's the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And there's 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is of the 7, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. So over here, so the 5 have fallen could be Reagan, Bush, Clinton, the other Bush, and Obama. And then, or it could be the 5th one has fallen, Obama, which he has. He lost his power. Okay. And then it says 1 is. Okay. So that could connect to Trump. What's interesting is that these verses come out of the context of Revelation 17 and 18 is Babylon and the harlot of Babylon. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. 1 is could be connecting to the harlot of Babylon, who I really connect to Trump. Okay. And then, so then it says, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. And so I'm hoping that connects to Biden, because then we can only, really expect him for a short time. But then it goes on to say, the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th, and is of the 7, and he goes to destruction. Okay. So, I think I put this on the next slide. Okay. For the longest time, I used to think that the 8th beast was Obama, because I used to always think he was coming back. Because, it says, he used to be of the 7, but he comes back and then he goes to destruction. Okay. So could be Obama, but not, then I got to thinking recently, well, what if this is Trump? Okay. So what if Trump is the 6th and the 8th? Okay. And we see him come back and he goes to destruction. Okay. So we just kind of have to wait and see what happens. And then, anyways, so the 10 horns, so this is the thing about the 10 horns, where it says the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. Okay, so I connect those to the 10 horns. We talked about earlier how I connect that to the beast from the sea, to Black Lives Matter. I don't know if there's a connection with the 10 horns to the 10 toes. There's a possibility with that. But mostly I want to show you this to show you that I think we are nearing the end. The prophecy is being fulfilled. The slots are being filled in. What's interesting is, starting with Ronald Reagan, is that, he became president in 1981. So I think there's like a 40-year time frame there, to 2021. Let's see, let me do the math. 0. Yeah. So that would definitely be significant. So just some more quick view about dates. Okay, so after the deal of the century, 7 weeks later was the deal of the century. 7 weeks after the deal of the century was the start of the coronavirus shutdown. 120 days after the deal, and that was actually the shutdown, 318, not 311. And then 120 days after the deal of the century was the start of rioting in America. So I thought that was interesting, because we see like 120 connect, we see that in the story of Noah, where God gives him 120 years before he brings judgment. So definitely the rioting could have been also some judgment, because of the deal of the century. So I called that the lion's den. And then 190 days after the deal of the century, which was the 71st day of writing, was the explosion in Lebanon, and that happened on 8/4. And so I wondered if that was the start of the fiery furnace phase, because then there was fires in Israel and fires in America. I missed this before, but 8/4 is also Obama's birthday. So definitely kind of interesting. So then we got the 6 peace deals there, or 5, I guess. And then what we had is, so then what we moved into is that 62 days after 11/7 was January 7th. Okay, so I already talked about that. That was also Orthodox Christmas. That was the Electoral College vote. 7 weeks after Trump's impeachment is Holy Saturday. So I was trying to see if there was kind of a chiastic structure where you had 7 weeks after the deal of the century. Does that connect to the 7 weeks after Trump's impeachment vote? And then, but I guess I didn't really come up with 120 or 190. But what we saw was March 10th was 12 months after the coronavirus declared a pandemic. Which it was declared a pandemic on 3/11, which I thought 3/11 was a very significant date. Okay. March 10th was also 3 months after 12/11, okay, which was Hanukkah day 1. We see kind of that 3-month time frame in scripture. But the next day, really, March 11th was the 3/11 anniversary. Okay, there was a lot that happened on that day, so it was also significant this year too, because it was the 50th day of Biden. That was when Biden signed his 1.9 trillion quote unquote relief bill. He also had a COVID speech about the 4th of July where he did not mention Easter, even though a year ago we had Trump talking about trying to get us out of our houses by Easter. So definitely very interesting. On March 12th was when Minneapolis decided they were going to award $27 million to the Floyd family. So more of our money they're stealing for their liberal causes. March 18th was, so this is the year after the shutdown started in 2020. March 28th was Passover day 1. It was also Palm Sunday. It was also when we saw the worm moon. Okay. March 29th, this is very interesting. That was when that Ever Given, that big ship, was released from the mud after being stuck for 6 days. I kind of think that could be like the sign of the Messiah, or like the sign of Noah, where we have kind of this big boat, being set free. So I definitely think God was sending, and so I didn't know, because 6 days after this boat, let me get my calendar. Okay, so if you count the 29th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would lead to today, Holy Saturday. So definitely kind of interesting. April 2nd was the 6th day of Passover, also Good Friday. That was when the U.S. was invited back into the Iran deal by other countries. And they're planning next Tuesday to have a meeting to really restart this Iran deal. So April 3rd, which is today when I'm making this video, is Holy Saturday. It's 7th day of Passover. It's 7 weeks after Trump's impeachment vote. It's also, traditionally, the Jewish people consider this the date of the Red Sea splitting. Is what they think. And then tomorrow is Easter. Okay. So, what I think is significant about Easter is it's also the 8th day of Passover. Okay. The 8th day, we see a lot about the 8th day in scripture. The 8th day is considered the day of circumcision. So if you think of circumcision as the removal of flesh, which is kind of how the Bible teaches it, it could be the day that God chooses to make a division between his people and the people of Egypt, or basically his enemies, which, I already talked about. It would be, kind of the wicked on the left and the wicked on the right. What's interesting is that on the 8th day of Passover, the Jewish people have what they call the Moshiach's meal. That would be like the Messiah's meal. And they eat matzah. They eat matzah bread and they drink 4 cups of wine for this Mashiach's meal. So definitely a connection to Jesus, um, like with the Last Supper, um, drinking wine, and you know, where he says this body is, this bread is my body, and this wine, and he connects it to the covenant. Um, all those pictures. It was also the start of the circling of Jericho, um, you know, according to the rabbis. Um, and then tomorrow is also the 62nd day after Groundhog Day, and Groundhog Day was when financial aid was restored to the Palestinians. Groundhog Day was also the 12th month, the 6th day, after the deal of the century. So definitely very interesting. And so I'm kind of wondering, is this like, okay, we already saw like a day 62 where Biden got power, but then is there going to be another 62 day where the Messiah is going to get, get power, get authority? Easter is also the 80th day of Biden from January 7th. Okay. I don't know the significance of 88, but it sounded like a good number to point out. But it's also the 75th day after January 20th, which was, Biden's inauguration. And we saw that Abram left Haran when he was 75 years old. So that could be significant, prophetically speaking. Easter is also 21 weeks and 2 days after 11/7 when they declared Biden the winner. What's interesting, we see in Daniel where it talks about the prince of Persia. Is that what it says? Like, giving Gabriel, I think it's Gabriel or Michael, giving Gabriel, like resisting Gabriel for 21 days. And so that would make like the 21st week of Biden would be, what would that be? What, like Good Friday or something like that. And then, because then in that chapter of Daniel, it talks about the 24th day. Then Daniel has like a messianic encounter. So I think there could be a connection to that time frame. So that's why I kind of drew attention to that, the 21 weeks. I can't find it right now. We'll talk about it some other time. Okay, so then what's interesting about April 4th is on the Hebrew date. So it's Nisan 22. So that is the date. It's 5 years after Obama's Red Wedding Dinner, which Steve Fletcher covers some of the prophetic significance of that Red Wedding Dinner. I mean, Obama makes a joke about locking the doors, and so definitely kind of interesting. What's very interesting is that April 4th is 10 months, 10 days after the start of the BLM rising. We read in the scripture about Jerusalem, the Babylonians invading Jerusalem the 10th day of the 10th month. So is that a possible prophetic connection? It's also the 53rd anniversary of the Martin Luther King assassination. I just read about this because I wasn't aware of it, but because I was just trying to see if there was any significant historical events that happened on April 4th, and that was MLK's assassination. When Martin Luther King got assassinated, that was the start of 3 days of rioting and looting in 100 cities in America. I mean, it must have been an awful time in America, but I'm wondering if we're going to see a repeat of history, because I kind of think we are. Really think we're going to see the militant on the right and the militant on the left start a civil war. But God's people are going to be put into protective Passover booths, while this rioting's going on. And it's interesting that it was 3 days of rioting at MLK's assassination, because I'm thinking it could be the start of 3 days of darkness. So we'll see what happens. It's interesting that it's 3 months, 11 days from Christmas. I thought that was interesting because you know how 3/11 last year was the start of the pandemic. So very interesting. I mean, God likes certain numbers and uses them a lot. It's 6 months, 2 days from Sukkot. That's interesting. You also see like that 62 number there. It's 66 days from Tu B'Shavat, which is the new year for trees. I don't know if that connects to the 66 days that we see in Leviticus 12, but that's a possibility. Okay, this thing that I really liked was, this date that I really liked was 12 months, 25 days from 3/11 is Easter. Okay, so if you know that Christmas is on the 25th day of the 12th month, that is fascinating to me. Okay, so is Easter also a type of Christmas? Okay, so I told you that there was 12 months of beauty treatments in the Book of Esther, and then so what we're having is, so Easter has ended up being 25 days after the end of these 12 months of beauty treatments. Okay, it's very interesting. It'd be very interesting to see what happens. So is Easter also Christmas? Okay, so that'd be great because I like Christmas too. So, very interesting. So kind of like, remember how I told you that there's so many connections between the two big Jewish holidays, Passover and Sukkot, and then it'd be great if there's kind of this big connection between Easter and Christmas. I mean, there is, but it'd just be kind of neat if there's like a messianic era connection with Christmas and Easter. So that'd be neat to see. So this is my big picture with the Sea of Obama and the Sea of Trump, and then we're in the dry land. So this is, kind of basically what I'm showing is the parting of the Red Sea. And I said that, the Jewish people's tradition is that it happened today, on the calendar, Nisan 21. So, but maybe they're a day off. We'll just have to see what happens. So it says, as the sea split, the hidden world came to light. God's people are hidden. Esther is hidden behind her mask. And then it says Psalm 18:16. The psalmist says, he drew me out of many waters. Okay. So definitely a lot of neat connections. Okay. So that's why I think Easter is a high watch date. And it's just neat because obviously, resurrection of Jesus is just a really strong connection to his second return and the start of the Messianic era and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just have to see what happens. And then, obviously if it doesn't work out, I'll have to recalculate, turn on my GPS again and recalculate. But I wanted to bring these out just in case something happened, and then we'd have it, kind of written down for you to look at. So that's my video on Esther gets the vaccine and Queen Vashti does not. So I thank you so much for listening. I really pray that you have a really blessed Easter, and if we don't see the Messiah come back on Easter, hang in there. The next big high wash date would be, because right now the Jewish people are counting the Omer, and the next big really high wash date would be, what do they call it? Like Pentecost. What's the Jewish name for it? Shavuot for the Jewish people. And so that would be, we're already on, like, Easter is considered the 7th day of the Omer, and then the next day is the 8th day. So, so we got like 43 more days before Shavuot. So that there's a lot of prophetic connections with Shavuot. So it's hard because I'm all kind of anticipating maybe Easter, um, you know, um, and so, but just in case I'm wrong, because I've been wrong a lot before. It's so hard because these a lot of times numbers work out, and maybe they mean something prophetically, but it maybe isn't the final ultimate that Jesus is coming back, but just that something is going to happen, prophetically. But we won't know until the day actually happens. So we'll just have to wait and see. Um, so I thank you so much for watching. I pray that you be blessed. I pray that God gives you endurance. Hang in there. Um, your redemption draws nigh. Look up, your redemption draws nigh. So thanks so much for tuning in, and God bless.